What happened in practice for the Japanese Grand Prix? Free practice 1 then, and it was a Red Bull one too. But the biggest talking point, and one with which we'll probably take up the majority of this podcast, is Logan Sargeant. Having a crash in the first practice session after the whole shenanigans in Australia and not having a spare chassis. And of course, there was a lot of talking around Williams' decision of giving Logan Sargeant the repaired chassis that Alex Albon obviously crashed in Australia, rather than giving Logan back his old, perfectly fine chassis. Williams were like, no, you are the number 2, you get what you're given. And they gave him the repaired chassis, which turned out to be a masterstroke because Logan managed to break his car very, very quickly in a quite unusual crash, I would say. One with which I don't think you can really justify or sort of defend him in any way. It was just a complete and utter misjudgment.
Yeah, he ran a little bit wide, and there's that tiny little bit of runoff. It's not really runoff, it's actually a section of another layout that you can kind of get away with. And maybe if he'd kind of eased off and realised what is the point accelerating at full speed into this corner. But as with Suzuka and many crashes we've seen at Suzuka, you put, there's no room for error. He's put wheels on the grass and then just kept his foot in on a very quick corner and, just spun straight into the wall.
New romantics. Why on earth did Williams give Logan Alex's repaired car? This is before the FP1 crash. I on a human level, I felt like it was pretty wild. Because not only, preferential treatment to Albon, I get it. I completely understand that Albon is a much better driver. But then I'm sat there going, why would you sign Logan? What's the point? Why would you carry on with him this year if you are going to pretty much ridicule him by being like, you're not going to get anything that Albon's getting everything, basically. And I know that there is Formula One, but what's the point? Like, Logan needs the backing. James Vowles has tried to wrap him up in cotton wool and been like, he's fine, he's going to grow this year. But then all of Williams' actions goes against anything that they've been saying in the media about believing in him or that he has any kind of potential. So for me, I'm sat there going, this is really quite harsh on Logan, because to crash in free practice 1, for me, my opinion, is that that shows the kind of mental state that Logan is in.
It's very true what you say, that James Vowles can talk in the media with his amazing presence and all these words about we're supporting him and all this kind of stuff, but is he? Because they're not putting trust in him. Now, I think it's right that they haven't, but it does beg the question, why is he even there in the first place? I get the side that are saying, well, Logan was pretty rubbish last year. He was making lots of mistakes, lots of errors. You've hired him for a new season, so you clearly want to develop him and you see potential in him. So taking away things from him and knocking his confidence already is basically, why have you even bothered signing him in the first place? Hire someone like, Lawson or whoever that's shown he can handle it and things like that. So it makes no sense.
Question from Matty Row 1_. Do you think the crash in FP1 signals that Logan's confidence has been damaged by the car switch? Where does he go from here? Where does he go from here? I have never seen a more slam dunk he's lost his seat for next year situation ever. Like, this is, unless this man somehow plucks himself out of the gutter and scores points, which on paper doesn't look like it's going to happen, this is probably going to be Logan's last season. I can't see how he would come back from it. The team aren't supporting him. Logan doesn't have that innate natural talent to at least challenge Albon. And we've said time and time again, Albon is not Max Verstappen. You need to be with your teammate to at least deserve a drive somewhere else. It's not happening for him, unfortunately. When you lose the team's backing, what do you have left?
While it's absolutely savage what what Williams did in the last race. You're a Formula One driver. You have to pick yourself up from these things, and it is sink or swim. You have to deliver. And I think you even said, if he can't recover from just missing out a race, he needed to come back and prove Williams why that was the wrong decision, and he's done exactly the opposite.
There is literally not a worse thing he could have done than crashing in free practice 1 of the next weekend after he got dropped.
And
that just solidifies
crash as
every
well.
decision. Yeah.
A big crash where you miss FP2.
Question. We're still on this topic. MJ_95_. If you were in James Vowles' position, what would you do? So, in James Vowles' position, where we already know that points are everything, are they hitting an emergency button to see if they can be a mid-season driver swap here? At what stage do you go, well, we keep saying our motto is points, why don't we get someone else in the car that we think that actually can deliver that? But look, we're not gonna jump the gun just yet, but I don't think you could be in a much worse position at the moment, because the one thing that Logan Sargeant had left was James Vowles and his beautiful words. Even that's gone.
If I was him, I don't see why they're keeping him. I wonder if there's a reason that there's no one there to step up and replace him yet. Of course, Mercedes are the engine supplier there. Would Toto want to drop Kimi Antonelli in this early? I think is quite bold to do that. They want to get him in at Mercedes early, and obviously that Mercedes seat is free. So if a Williams seat is free, and you can learn your craft first and have half a year or even more in a Williams to learn and then get bumped up, then maybe that is the perfect thing that Toto Wolff can see.
Now, question from Bandershoot94. Could VCARB possibly consider a lineup of Lawson and Iwasa in 2025? Oh, well, why? Unless Tsunoda's finding a better seat somewhere else, and that's what Bandershoot is suggesting there. Perhaps a Red Bull call-up, which I can't see, as we've said many, many times. No, I don't think it'll be Lawson and Iwasa in 2025, personally. Iwasa did do a good job, don't get me wrong. I think he was 15th, 16th or something, a couple of seconds off. A good outing for Iwasa, but I don't see it unless Tsunoda moves away.
Yeah, Lawson, definitely. He deserves a place on the grid, at the very least next year. And, you can see that happening, but I don't know why they'd be looking at Iwasa when Yuki's doing an amazing job. And, Iwasa at the end of the day is doing this for the allocation that every car on the grid, so 2 per team, have to field a young driver. Makes sense, I guess, for RB and from the Honda side to allow a Japanese driver to do it at the Japanese Grand Prix. I bet he's very glad that it wasn't the conditions of FP2 when he did that. Otherwise, he wouldn't have got to drive. So, but Yuki's doing an amazing job, and it would require him to be leaving RB for his seat to be under threat, in my opinion.
Free practice 2 now, and, well, what an amazing session that we are so glad we tuned in for. Of course, it was wet, and then it dried, and then it was wet a little bit more, and then it dried up again, which was the worst conditions you can have for a practice session.
Yeah, it's those classic conditions where, and also there's that added mix of it being Suzuka, where one tiny, as we know with Logan Sargeant, tiny little mistake or whatever, you're off. You're not going into runoff, you're going into a barrier. So it's not worth the risks for anyone, and that's why we got a pretty dull FP2 with not a lot of running, which is a shame because the Japanese fans are some of, if not the best around, and yeah, they're amazing.
Question from Toon Sports SG. How can we incentivize teams to send their drivers out during free practice when it is only a drizzle, not a shower or a downpour, paying fans and all? It's difficult. I think on this, I do genuinely feel sorry for the fans because you do pay to go and see Formula One and cars going around tracks. But also there has to be a reason to, especially on a practice day. And I think that it's difficult. It is hard because obviously we all want to see 2 hours of running in practice. but that's never going to happen. Usually in FP2, I think they wait 15 minutes anyway until they go out, and because of one thing or another. And of course, there's lots of things around engine usage and parts usage, and it goes on and on and on. So where do we stop? Where do we land at to try and get the teams to go out more? I think it's just an unfortunate turn of events.
I don't think it's necessarily a problem like that. It occurs very, very rarely, and I think that is just because it's very unfortunate with the weather. But what do they do? The teams aren't going to want to risk crashing, like we say. They've only got a certain limited number of parts. But even if you give them as many tyres as they want in a budget cap era, they're still not going to go out there, which is a shame for the fans because they pay to see it. It's just unfortunate and the luck of the draw sometimes that you get these sessions.
Finally, Mercedes have brought upgrades for this race, as have a lot of teams, Red Bull included as well. James, BCFC4, have Mercedes improved? God knows. How are you supposed to know after FP1 and what we've just had in free practice 2? And also, with the amount of times we have seen Mercedes bait us one way or another with free practice, we will not know until qualifying and the race. I think that was it Bradley Lord was interviewed during practice today, and they were talking about how they were working the rear tyres too much over the front tyres, and they were trying to balance that out a little bit more, and the fact that their car is operating in quite a small window, and that's not obviously the way you want to go. So it seems like Mercedes have had a lot of problems previously, as we've seen, and we'll have to see. We'll have to wait until Saturday and Sunday. It's hard to read right now.
Yeah, we need to see a few races in succession as well. It's not even a case of just, we'll find out on race day, because Mercedes have been such a flip-floppy, inconsistent team throughout session to session, and they've said so many times they don't understand the car, that they could have they could even have an amazing Japanese Grand Prix, be really good, maybe get a podium, and then in China they're going out in Q2. It's just what we're used to with Mercedes now. They just can't seem to understand that car, and they're changing all the time. So the only thing that you can predict is that you can't predict what they're going to be doing in practice.
Wise words from Tom Bellingham, as always. This is why you tune into the P1
commentary
podcast. The only thing you can predict is that you can't predict anything. Well, there you go. We will see you tomorrow for qualifying. Twitch watch along as always. P1 live show tickets are still available. We are live next week in Cambridge, Bath and London. So if you haven't got your tickets, go and get them all right now. And we'll see you very soon. Lots of love. Bye.
Bye.